Oh, boys! I'm back!
Been a long time. Too long, actually. In my defense, I was busy doing things. Special things.
Shall we?
I do.
I do.
Hail to the king, baby.
It's been pretty fun. And what a funny coincidence, today's movie is The Bride.
I can't remember.
It's in theaters and I watched it the other night. I was fairly excited for this movie. Most any movie with Christian Bale, of all actors, will generate a lot of hype. The man is known for being very choosy with his movies, being an A-list actor and all.
Having said that, I do have some thoughts.
And I'm gonna tell you all of my spoiler-filled thoughts, but first, roll that intro. Okay, so this movie is a bit of an odd one. So from the trailers, you'll get the impression that this movie is just a new Bride of Frankenstein story set in a more modern-ish time. Yeah, but it's a bit more odd than that. So the movie starts off with Mary Shelley, the author of the original Frankenstein story. And this movie kind of has a similar take as the original black and white movie Bride of Frankenstein, where she is telling someone, well, if you like that story, wait till you hear about the sequel. If you know the actual story of Frankenstein, y'all would know this is kinda bullshit. If you don't read, like me, you can check out Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein that came out last year, which was a masterpiece. One of the best movies of the year, in my opinion. But that is a more accurate telling of the book. You see, Frankenstein, the scientist, never makes the monster's bride. It does not happen. So the original black and white movie, inserting that Mary Shelley herself wrote a sequel that doesn't exist, is an odd choice. But I did like that movie, and that movie did stay loyal to the one book in certain regards, because the first movie was like the first half of the book, and the second movie is the second half of the book, and then they kind of just changed the ending. But The Bride makes the even odder choice of Mary Shelley talking to us from beyond the grave and possessing some poor depressed girl in the 60s named Ida, and makes her mouth off a lot at a big gathering and says some very insulting things about a mob boss who is essentially a serial killer, and that causes her to either be pushed or jump backwards down a flight of stairs, break her neck, and die. Then we meet our monster, who just goes by Frank or Frankenstein.
Hold up. Wait a minute.
So let me get this straight. Mary Shelley, an author who wrote Frankenstein, is possessing a woman in her sequel book from beyond the grave. This is weird. I don't know why they did this. Whatever. Frank meets a mad scientist and asks her to make him a bride. At first she says no, but then he appeals to her mad scientist side and she does it. They grab a fresh corpse from a grave and hook her up to a machine and turn it on, and whoop, Ida is back to life. Wow, that was super easy. I have a lot to say about these scenes, but I'll save them for after my recap. So our bride is more possessed than she was before she died, but Frank still loves her and they go off together. She is way more energetic and dancey and loud, and Frank is more humble, respectable, shy, and daydreams a lot. Mostly about a much more beautiful life. Side note, there is a fair amount of humor in this movie too, which I was surprised about and definitely enjoyed. So she, being the more aggressive one, wants to go out to some freaky dance club, and Frank, being the more passive guy, just sits, drinks, but not too much, and watches her have fun. So some guys get a bit too handsy and Frank steps in and they both go their separate ways, but the guys don't let up and attack Frank and almost force themselves onto the bride, but that's when the monster strength kicks in and Frank, I think, kills them both. Maybe the bride killed one of them, I don't recall. So Frank freaks out and says he has to run away, there will be torches in the streets looking for a monster, and he says she will be better off without him. But she responds with, I don't have anywhere to go, so they run off together. And this is what most of the movie is from here on out. They are on the run, get into trouble, and then just keep running. Side characters are the goons from the beginning of the movie, some low-level mob guys that pushed or either let the bride fall down the stairs, the serial killer mob boss, who is fucking weird, by the way. The guy literally, in his office of operations, which is like just a deli, has a dozen jars filled with like at least 50 chicks' tongues sitting behind him.
What, are you retarded?
I can understand a mob boss paying off a police commissioner to be able to get away with some stuff, but having trophies of your victims on display in the main dining area of a restaurant isn't intimidating.
It's so dumb.
It's so dumb, it's brilliant.
No! It's just dumb.
There's also a detective with a hot reporter on Frank and the Bride's tail. He eats and she is way smarter than he is. That pretty much sums them both up. On Frank and the Bride's journey, they have some fun, but the heat on them is fairly big, so it doesn't last very long. And a lot of the time, the reason it doesn't last very long is because something SA related happens around or to the bride, and Frank steps in and puts in some work. But sometimes the bride does get some blood on her hands as well. As the story progresses, Frank is more happy, but he also becomes a worse version of himself, which may not be what the movie intended, but that's definitely how I felt about him. And it doesn't help that he keeps lying to the bride and makes up stories about their lives before her accident. In the end, he tells her the truth that they didn't know each other and there wasn't an accident. She died, they found her, and then brought her back to life. Police have surrounded them. Frank gets shot in the head and she drags him back to the doctor's office to bring him back, but she says no. The police surround the bride and riddle her with bullets. After the over-the-top shootout, the reporter, who is now a detective because the other guy just gave her his badge, stands in and bosses everybody around.
What? Oh, come on!
Yeah, I'll get to that in a minute. So after she gets all the cops out of there, the final scene of the movie is the lab turning on and bringing the couple back to life, and then Mary Shelley steps into the afterlife light and says, "The tale of the bride was so great."
Was it?
Oh, and a bunch of women who followed the bride's story as a kind of revolution break into the mob boss's place and get their own justice on him, and the movie ends.
Finally.
Okay, this is a very girl power feminist movie. Now, if that blows your skirt up, by all means, see and enjoy the movie. But if you're not into that kind of shit, which is a hot political topic these days, then this movie might not be for you. And it's a bit tacked on at the end with the bride's final speech where she starts yelling out "me too" a few times before she gets gunned down. So the movie makes a few odd choices that kind of take away the uniqueness of the Frankenstein story. Mainly the science. First of all, the balls of the writer of this movie to have the chick mad scientist say that Dr. Frankenstein was dumb for making the monster out of different parts of people.
What, are you retarded?
The whole point, you dumb bitch, was to find healthy parts of different bodies to bring back to a singular healthy body, which this movie completely ignores to the point of it making no fucking sense. So get this, the bride falls down a flight of stairs and breaks a few bones and especially her neck. And the movie completely ignores that. She should be walking around with a crooked, cracky neck for the whole movie. The machine didn't heal her, it brought her back from the grave. In the end of the movie, keep in mind, Frank got shot in the head. His brain should be useless. Nope, they just turned it on and oop, he's back to life again.
It's so dumb.
It's so dumb, it's brilliant.
No! It's just dumb.
Yeah, I get that it's okay to have different interpretations of the same story, but the main difference, it seems to be for this movie, is to have the bride be the main focus and to have it set in the 60s. Overlooking the science of a Frankenstein story would be like overlooking the vampire aspect of a Dracula story. Can it be done? Sure. Do you want to watch it? Probably not. What else can I say about this flick? Oh yeah, Frank becoming his worst self. He may not be the main focus of this movie, but he is as close as it gets, and him starting off with all of his best qualities only to have them crumble after matching with the bride and lying to her about them being a couple gets worse every time it comes up, and it comes up several times because it has to. The bride has no memory of her previous life, so whenever they aren't actively doing something, she asks him about how they met, what their proposal and wedding was like, and he, being a super daydreamer, comes up with these elaborate stories off the fly pretty well, but she eventually becomes doubtful and he only tells her the truth when she calls him out on it. The bride being possessed by Mary Shelley is so odd, it doesn't really make sense or really end up being of that much value. I guess Mary Shelley feeds her information about the mob boss's victims from beyond the grave or something, I don't know, but it really begs the question of, what was the point? You could take that part out and it just be the bride being a schizo and nothing would change. Actually, she doesn't even have to be a schizo because it really doesn't make the narrative go anywhere. It would be easy for her to just be a slobbery drunk telling the hard truths no one wants to talk about in the beginning of the movie, and that is what got her killed. And that's it. Very easy thing to rewrite that would change practically nothing of the main narrative. Also, I saw this with my lady, and she noticed that the makeup of the bride was inconsistent throughout the story because the black stuff on her face is something she vomits up and stains her skin. What else can I say? Oh, the reporter becoming a detective is ludicrous. So, the detective knew the bride before she died. She was an informant on the mob boss. Now, this to the audience means nothing because it comes out of nowhere. Just an example of bad writing. There was no payoff because we had no build up. He was just doing his job, so him just coming out of nowhere and saying that's how he knows her falls pretty flat. And he gets shot and says he tendered his resignation on the condition that he could pick his replacement, and he just hands his badge to the reporter and whoop, she's a detective. Yeah, I know back in the 60s things weren't as organized as they are today, but the idea that a detective can make anyone else a detective is not a thing. This isn't Game of Thrones where knights can make other knights. So I rolled my eyes pretty hard at that scene. Also, in the shootout where 20 cops are making Swiss cheese out of the bride and the reporter stops it all and takes charge, also made me roll my eyes pretty hard. And speaking of other bad writing moments, there's quite a bit of plot armor in this movie. At least 2 times in the movie, the bride has a gun and is pointing it at a crowd, and several cops have the drop on her, but they don't shoot. And then Frank causes a big distraction and then they get away. Every part of it is poorly done. The cops not shooting her, Frank causing a distraction to every cop pointing a gun at her, them getting away scot-free, except the 3rd time where Frank gets shot and she drags his very heavy body into a car, never gets shot, drives away and drags him to the Mad Doc's place. Which, how the hell does she remember how to get there? Whatever. Is it a terrible movie? The first half, I'd argue, is pretty good, and the characters are fairly likable, and the comedic moments are fun, but the second half just gets worse and worse. I don't know what people are expecting to see when going into this, but whatever it is, it's probably not going to be that. And that's all I got for you. See you all again, and hopefully I'll return with something spooky.